So thank you very much for being here. And I have to say, this is my first BIOCOMM meeting, and it's been really a privilege meeting all of you and hearing about the exciting work that everyone is doing. It's a really great community, so thank you. Yeah. So my name is Betsy Skrip, and I'm a science visualization specialist at MIT at the Center for Biomedical Innovation, or CBI. And I've been at MIT for about 4 years, with CBI for about 2 years, and I've been in the profession for about 8 years. And I'm really passionate about science visualization. And I've often said that one of the reasons that I'm really excited about the field is because there are so many different areas to explore. The field of art, of visual communication, is always growing and changing, especially with advances like we've seen here in 3D printing and advancements in camera and imaging technology, and with computer graphics and with interactivity, and like we've seen with web design and with apps. And of course, the field of science is always advancing with new discoveries and technology. So combining the two fields of art and science, and the possibilities are really endless. And new opportunities are arising all the time. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about one such opportunity, and that is within online education, which is still relatively new and growing. And to get a sense, how many people here have created content or created visuals for online courses? That's great. I would love to talk to you after about it. So in this presentation, I'm going to walk you through the creation of one specific course created at MIT, and that is 1003X, the Principles of Biopharmaceutical Manufacturing. So in the presentation, I'll give you a little bit of a background about the course and about the online learning platform that it runs on. And I'll walk you through how the course was created, including the team structure and some of the workflows that we used in order to create over 60, that's 60, 4 to 8 minute videos within a little less than a year. Yeah. Then I'll share with you some of the data about who took the course, including some of their educational backgrounds and regional distribution. And I'll share you some of the feedback they provided about how they liked the course. And then finally, I'll share with you some of my views about some of the current challenges in creating online courses, and some ideas for the future of how science visualization can play a larger role in online education. So to get started with some background, as I said, I'm a science visualization specialist at MIT's Center for Biomedical Innovation, and that's kind of a fancy term for science illustrator and animator, but I do have some other roles, including doing some web design and project management. But my main role there is the illustrator and the art director for CBI's online course, 1003X, Making Biologic Medicines for Patients, the Principles of Biopharmaceutical Manufacturing. And at this point, you may be wondering where the 1003X comes from. And it's simply from MIT's course numbering system. And looking at this, you might notice that there's no course 13 or 19 mentioned. It's not a mistake. Those courses existed, but then were absorbed into other course numbers. So as you can see, 10 refers to courses in chemical engineering. And the X means that it's an online course. And this course has been a large effort from many different groups and people. As you can see here, in addition to CBI and the chemical engineering department, the course was made possible with support from MIT's biology department and also from MITx, which provided a large amount of effort in terms of project management, video production services, and also IP and platform support. And the course was also made possible with a grant from the Amgen Foundation as part of their mission to advance science education and also encourage people to enter the field of biomanufacturing. This course is targeted toward undergraduates, but in fact we had participants from many educational backgrounds, including people within the industry who wanted to learn more about their field in areas outside of their normal day-to-day activities. And to explain a little bit about this graphic here, this is one of many illustrations that I created for the course. But this image has been used as the main image to represent the course because it shows the main concepts that the course covers, namely how you select a host cell and may modify its DNA in order to produce a target protein or a biologic, which is then used to treat patients. And this particular illustrated structure here actually represents the actual 3D structure of insulin. And insulin and diabetes is used as an example throughout the course. So the course also covers upstream processing, where cells are grown in bioreactors, and downstream processing, where methods such as chromatography columns, shown here, are used to isolate all of the other cellular material and isolate just that target protein of interest. So how do people access the course? 1003X is hosted on the online platform edX, which offers free, and I'll say it again, free, online courses to students throughout the world. And they can also pay to receive a verified certificate, but it's a minimal fee. In the case of 1003X, it's only $50. So this is a screenshot of edX's homepage. And just to get a sense, how many people have heard of edX? Okay, great, a couple people. And how many people have taken and completed a course on edX? One person. Okay, great. To provide you a little bit of a background for edX, it was founded by MIT and Harvard in 2012, just 4 years ago. They just celebrated their 4th birthday last month, and I can tell you from experience, they do have birthday cake. Yeah, very good. edX is known as a MOOC provider, and you may have heard the term MOOC. It stands for Massive Open Online Course. And it gets that term, the term massive, mainly because of the large audiences that they reach. So to give you a sense, the first time that 1003X was run, 630 students completed the course. And to put that in perspective, if we consider the average number of students who take an on-campus course to be about 30 students, that means that an on-campus course would have to be run 21 times in order to reach the same number of students that one online course reaches. So MOOCs reach large audiences, and they're open or free to students throughout the world. edX is nonprofit, and it runs on open source software. And it currently hosts over 650 courses in a wide range of disciplines, and created by schools and organizations throughout the world, including MIT. So this is the landing page for 1003X on edX. And here students can learn more about the course, and they can also enroll. As you can see, we just launched the 3rd run of the course last week. And students can enroll to receive a certificate as late as July 7th, but they can enroll just in the course as late as August 1st. And enrolling means that even if they don't complete all of the assessment questions or the exams, they'll still have access to a lot of the materials, including all of the videos, even after the course has ended. So again, this landing page provides information about the course and where students can enroll. And it also features a about 2 to 3 minute promotional video. And all courses on edX have a promotional video. And it's meant to give the students a sense of what the course is like, what the instructors are like, and also to hopefully help excite them about taking the course. And you may or may not have already seen 1003X's promotional video in the salon. So thank you to the judges for selecting it. It was really nice to see it featured in there. But I'll play it now so you can get a better sense of what the course is about.
Have you ever watched in awe as Lionel Messi scores yet another impossible goal? Or maybe you've been transported to another time and place when reading a novel by Anne Rice. What you may not realize is that without biologic medicines like human growth hormone, that small boy from Argentina could not have reached his full potential as one of the world's greatest soccer players. And without insulin, Anne Rice's diabetes may have kept her from writing some of her best-selling stories. Biologic medicines help millions of people worldwide overcome debilitating or even fatal diseases. Manufacturing is the key to making sure they can get these therapeutics. In this course, Making Biologic Medicines for Patients, Our team will walk you through the steps required to make these life-saving drugs.
But the bacteria in yeast are more robust than.
Biologic medicines are proteins used as drugs. In this course, you'll learn about the key building blocks that make a protein, and you'll learn about how variation in protein structure, whether by design or as a result of the manufacturing process, determine the safety and efficacy of a drug.
For millennia, people have used the power of living cells to produce essential staples by fermentation. You'll learn how biotechnology allows you to engineer some of those same cells to produce biologic medicines instead of food. We'll also look at how we can design and operate bioreactors to maximize the production of these drugs. What are the parts here that we're looking at?
We'll take you through the steps necessary to isolate the drug from the cellular machinery to ensure it's safe and efficacious.
These are depth filters for clarification.
You'll learn about how the entire process is linked and how choices made upstream, such as which cell line you choose, impact the purification design. You'll also learn about how these drugs are regulated to ensure the best possible patient experience.
And as you look through it, you'll see lots of little layers.
Along the way, we'll visit real manufacturing facilities to see how theoretical principles are applied in practice.
Industry has brought.
And we'll talk with pioneers in the field, such as Nobel laureate and co-founder of Biologic, Professor Phil Sharp.
It became a very widely used technology.
We invite you to go on this journey with us to learn how to make biologic medicines so that you too could play a part in improving the lives of millions today and tomorrow.
So pretty exciting. Oh, thank you. So as you can see and get a sense from this promotional video, this course provided a really wonderful opportunity for visuals in terms of photos and videos and animations. And in fact, when the instructors set out to create the course, they identified 3 main elements that they wanted to feature in order to help better engage students and create a richer learning experience. And these were interviews with experts in the field trips to labs and facilities, and animations. And since I was the art director for the animations, now I'd like to walk you through some of the workflows that we used because they required quite a bit of strategic thinking that I think are applicable in many areas of science visualization and project management, and not just online education. So, when starting any project, there are several main factors to consider. The first is content, or where your source material will come from. For example, scripts for videos. So many online courses are based upon pre-existing on-campus courses. An estimate from MITx is that 91% of MIT's courses on edX were developed from pre-existing on-campus courses. And in fact, some of these courses use lecture capture as the primary video format. Lecture capture being setting cameras up in a classroom and recording the professor as he or she presents to a classroom full of students. This was not the case with 1003X. 1003X was based loosely on an existing seminar series, 1003, 1053, Advances in Biomanufacturing. And in this seminar series, leading experts from the industry come each week and present to the students. And in fact, since 1003X has been developed, 1003 has been taught as a blended learning course, where some of it is still taught in the classroom, but some of it is taught online using the materials from 1003X. So bottom line is that the content for 1003X had to be developed all from scratch. And this was done by the 3 instructors, Dr. Paul Barone from CBI, Chris Love from the Koch Institute, and Dr. Stacy Springs from CBI. So they all wrote scripts and then were filmed reading the scripts from a teleprompter in front of a white or a green screen so that then illustrations and animations could be overlaid next to them. So another factor to consider is scope, namely how long the videos will be, how much of them is going to be animated, and the total number of videos. A common standard right now in online learning is to make the videos about 4 to 8 minutes long, because any longer than that, and it's difficult to retain the viewer's attention and also their retention of the material. So another common practice is to follow the videos up with an assessment question to make sure that they've understood the material and will retain it. And as it turned out, a large percentage of each video was animated, about 80 to 90%, in order to help the students better understand and visualize the content. And number of videos. So as I mentioned, we've just launched the third run of the course this past week. And every time that we run the course, we've added additional videos. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to focus just on the first run because that's where the majority of the content was developed. So for the first run, there were 61 videos because the course was 6 weeks long, so that was about 10 videos per week. 9 of those videos were field trips, which did not require animation, but 52 of them were shot in front of the white or green screen and did require animations. And to put that all in perspective, if we round that 52 to 50 and video length to 5 minutes, that's about 250 minutes of animated content, so about 4 hours. So we basically did a Lord of the Rings movie yeah. in a little less than a year with a small team. So it was a pretty impressive feat. So specifics, exactly how much time did we have? I joined the project in August 2014. And at that time, the course was projected to launch in April 2015. So that gave us 8 months and averaged about 3 days per animated video, which is really short. But that's looking at it as if it were only one person working on it and you're doing it sequentially, one task at a time, which was not the case. We had a team working on it. But that date was very much a moving target because working with the team, we had to figure out how long things would take and how long everyone worked together. And the scripts were also being developed at the same time the content was being developed. It wasn't all written ahead of time. So there was a lot of overlap in tasks, and it was very much a learning process. But much of online learning, content creation, is still very much a learning process. So we were able to move that launch date to July 2015, which gave us 11 months or 5 days per animated video, which is still pretty tight, but we did do it. We got everything done. And as I said, part of that was looking at your team or your resources, how many people you have available to work on the project. So for the first run, our media production team looked like this. And I should say right at the beginning that this is not the entire team. You'll see a slide at the end that gives credit to everyone who worked on the project. And I mentioned beforehand that the instructors wrote the scripts. We also had videographers who filmed, who went on the field trips to the labs, filmed the videos there, and then also in the studios. And as I mentioned, we had project managers, IP, and platform support. But this slide focuses just on the main core media production team. So as I mentioned, CBI hired me as a full-time art director, and I created storyboards, illustrations, animation stills, which I'll show you a little bit later what those are, and then also to help create animations. CBI also hired 3 freelance animators, and in a 5-day work week, we had one animator working 4 days a week, another one able to work 2 to 3 days a week, and another one who was able to provide 57 hours. We had one graduate student from chemical engineering who was able to access and render protein models from the protein data bank using PyMol, and some molecular models using ChemDraw. And we had a freelance sound designer who refined the audio because even when the instructors were filmed, sometimes going back and working on the animations, we'd find that maybe this sentence didn't work quite well, or maybe we need another sentence here, so we'd have to go back and record audio. But of course, there were differences in the way it sounded, so he helped level out all of that sound. And he also composed and created the soundtrack that you heard in the promotional video. And for the second run, he also created sound effects for the animations, and you'll see an example of those a little bit later. And from MITx, we had one part-time editor who did all of the editing, the compositing, and then refinements such as color correction. She actually did a lot of work with color correction, making sure that that background was a pure white to really make the animations and illustrations pop. And we had one part-time project coordinator who helped create the filming and editing schedules, review the scripts to make sure they were best suited for video, and also she was there for a lot of the filming. So once you know all of these parameters, you can then create a production schedule. And particularly with this project, the production schedule was really essential to making sure that the project stayed on track, but also to be able to assess just how much could be done within the allotted time. And really essential to creating that production schedule was knowing how long each step in the process took. And that was determined by really knowing the team and knowing how long each individual, including yourself, takes to do a certain task. So I'm sure we've all heard the very common question, well, how long will that take? And I'm sure we've all given the very common answer, well, that depends. And it does. Like it or not, people really want the art process to be quantifiable. And I've found in working in very fast-paced production environments that it really helps, especially for your own peace of mind as well, to be able to quantify and give the client options and inform them of how long those different options take. Because very often they've never gone through the process themselves, so we have to inform them. And so this initial dialogue really is a great opportunity to inform them and establish that common understanding. So something that I've developed and I use with my clients, and they've said that they found it very helpful, is a style guide. And I usually try to make it a little fun, so you can see, pick a perfect art style for your project, like pick a pickled pepper. So I used a pepper as an example. And the purpose of this guide is to give them a visual representation that they can just visually look and pick an art style that they want for their project, and then know how long, relatively, each of those art styles takes compared to other styles. So I'll just walk you through it here. It starts with the simplest line drawing, with all of the line weights being the same thickness, and then moving to a version where the line weights are different thicknesses and the ends taper, so to create that effect of light and shadow. Then moving to simple color, where each shape is a solid color, and then moving to maybe 1 to 4 colors. Then complex color, which has more colors, more blending, more use of gradient, and less reliance on lines in order to help establish edge boundaries. Then photorealistic, which just amplifies all those parameters and concept color to create an image that looks like it could be a photograph. And then finally, 3D, which has as one of its main benefits that you can see it from multiple angles. And so, of course, these times and styles are not definite or all-inclusive. They're really dependent upon the artist who creates them. And I really encourage artists to create these guides for themselves. So these styles happen to be my style of working, and I really like working in Illustrator. So all of these examples up to 3D are vector. And like I said, I've been working in high or fast-paced production environments for a while, 8 years now, so these times are relatively fast. And as you can see, the times are relative, so starting with the line drawing being X and ending with 3D being 20X, it's just kind of giving an idea that a 3D model might take 20 times as long as a line drawing. And these times here are the specific times that it took me to create this particular subject. So half an hour to create the line drawing and about 10 hours to create the 3D version. And of course, the times will also depend on the complexity of your model. So you can imagine having a model that's far more complex than a pepper. Those times will vary, or more simple. You're going to see an example later where we created 3D impellers for a bioreactor. And those were far simpler to create because the pepper had to be modeled, the UV map created, and then the textures created, and then the lighting arranged, whereas the impellers in the bioreactor didn't have to have the UV map or the texturing, so it was a lot simpler. So this guide, like I said, really just serves as a starting point for communication with a client. And something also to consider is that a client might say, oh, okay, 3D, photorealistic, that's the best, that's what I want. But this guide can establish that it might not be feasible with the amount of time that they have available and the budget that they have. And then also, 3D and photorealistic might not be the most effective for the particular project or for the particular learning situation. Sometimes a line drawing, a very simple line drawing or very simple color can be just as, if not more effective than a more detailed model because the learning is not distracted by all of that detail. So for 1003X, I presented a style guide to them right at the beginning, and they decided to go with simple color. And so that style was created or sustained throughout the project, as you can see in some examples here. So this is a drug binding to a target transmembrane receptor, an IgG antibody. This is Milstein and Kohler's famous 1975 experiment where they fused mouse B cells with mouse cancer cells to form more robust hybridomas to produce antibodies. And finally, a bioreactor. So again, these are all using that simple color style guide established at the beginning. Now, I have not yet created an animation guide in simpler style or in a similar style, but we did at the beginning establish two main categories: simple and complex. Pretty straightforward. So what is simple? Well, before I started at MIT, I worked in a production environment where many of the deliverables were self-running PowerPoint presentations. How many people here are familiar with or have used Articulate? Nobody. Oh, one person. Two people. Okay, awesome. So Articulate is a plugin to PowerPoint that allows you to add narration and then sync the animations to the narration and then publish the PowerPoint as a interactive or self-running HTML file. So I was creating a lot of animations in PowerPoint. And say what you will about PowerPoint, it's certainly not as robust an animation tool as, say, Flash or After Effects. But I found that I was able to create some pretty effective animations just using these simple animation tools in PowerPoint. And like I said, with an illustration or with an animation, sometimes something very simple can be the most effective. So the animations in 1003X were not created in PowerPoint. They were created using After Effects. But to just show the principle of what qualified as a simple animation, I've recreated an animation from 1003X here in PowerPoint. So this animation is showing the main steps in biopharmaceutical manufacturing. So starting with choosing a host cell and cell line development, upstream processing, downstream processing, the final product, which could be insulin or monoclonal antibody, and then fill and finish. And this animation, again, just created with simple fades and simple wipe transitions. Here's another example where the enzyme beta-glucose cerebrosidase, I challenge you to say that 10 times fast. Beta-glucose cerebrosidase has glycans attached, and researchers found that by using certain enzymes, they could trim off the sugars on the glycans so that if the glycan was left with only terminal mannose groups, there was a 16 times increased uptake of the enzyme into macrophages to treat Gaucher's disease. And so again, this animation was accomplished just by using simple fades and simple wipe transitions in PowerPoint. And so when going to After Effects, those principles were kept in mind of what would qualify as a simple animation. So using very simple fade transitions, mask effects, simple translation, movement, and simple rotation. And then because the majority of the animations were done in this simple style, we could then be more selective about which animations would be done with more complex animation techniques, such as particle effects. So here you can see the cells moving within the tubes and then moving down through centrifugation and collecting at the bottom of the tubes. Here, the creation of bubbles in ultrasonication. And then the cells breaking apart as the bubbles explode. And then particles moving down, and some of them moving through the filter, and some of them being collected on the membrane. And then here, particles moving down through a chromatography column and separating and moving at different speeds based on their attraction to the resin or an eluate. And then that data being represented in a chromatogram. And you can hear the sound effects that our sound designer had as well. Also considered in that complex category, as I mentioned, 3D animations. So these impellers were created in Maya and animated in Maya and then overlaid with the Illustrator assets and After Effects. So see them moving here to show the differences in flow by the different impellers. And then here, coupled with particle effects in After Effects, to show that the bubbles moving up hit the impeller and they're broken into smaller bubbles to increase surface area, and then those bubbles are circulated throughout the bioreactor. And then also in the complex category would be the movement of many small items, so many small parts. So here, the amino acids of insulin going from the primary structure to a folded structure, the copying of cells, so each of those assets were animated individually, the collection of plasmids, and then the movement of individual atoms during certain chemical reactions. So including art style into this equation, our production schedule came to look like this. And after creating about 5 videos in the beginning, we were able to determine and then plan that each video would take about 5 days for pre-production. So about 1 day to create the storyboards, then for the instructors to review the storyboards, and then to make revisions. 1 day for the editor to create the rough cut. 3 days for me to create illustrations and animation stills. And then 1 day for me to make revisions to those illustrations and animation stills. Then 3 days of animating, with 2 days to create the animations and 1 day to make revisions. And 3 days for compositing, with 2 days to create the composite and make revisions such as color correction, and then 1 day to make revisions based on the instructor's feedback. So about 11 days total per video. And as I said, this was achievable because we had many members in the team working on multiple videos at the same time. And we were able to complete all 52 animated videos not only on time, but actually a little ahead of time, because then we had beta testers watch the videos and provide feedback before the course officially went online to the world. And another factor that contributed greatly to us being able to finish ahead of time was because the instructors very promptly reviewed the material, particularly Paul Barone reviewed usually within the same day that we submitted the material and provided feedback. So that was really critical to keeping this workflow just constantly moving. And again, as I mentioned, these times are really dependent upon your individual team members. And we were really fortunate to have a very highly skilled, highly motivated team where everyone just worked incredibly well together. So another part of leading a team, as I learned, in addition to coordinating these workflows, was being able to communicate the vision for each animation, not only to the instructors, but to the rest of the team. And to do that, pre-production was absolutely necessary. Pre-production, particularly the storyboards and creating the animation stills, gave the instructors a sense of what the animation would look like ahead of time, before the final animation and the final video was created, in order to reduce the number of revisions that would be needed in these later steps in the process. And also, in particular, the animation stills, which I'm going to show you very shortly, they served as a great guide, not only for me to be able to distribute tasks, but also for the animator and for the editor to use as a guide, so that they would know, as they were creating them, what had to be done. And even if a certain video was split among many people, it would result in the final product being very close to what was established in the very beginning. And it was what the instructors expected to see at the very end. So now I'd like to take you through this workflow, which I've simplified here into the steps. But I'd like to show it to you now using a specific example, so that you can see the evolution of an animation and also see some of those methods that were put in place in order for shareability and reviewability. So every animation or every video began with a script, as I said, which was written by the instructors. So this is an example script, and I've enlarged it here. And you can see they wrote it with the narration in the left-hand column, and then a description in the right-hand column. And the description were their ideas of what they thought they might want to see on screen and what animated. And sometimes they'd include for me references to certain animations or certain illustrations in journals or online that I could look at to get a better idea of what they were thinking. From that, to create the storyboards, the narration was then broken up into parts, and you can see the larger example here. So broken up into parts, maybe fragments of sentences or individual sentences, and then each of those parts was numbered. So that then each of the numbered sections in the script would correspond to the numbered frames of the hand-drawn storyboard. And these storyboards were meant to be very sketchy, very simple, not very detailed. I created them for about 10 videos, but then after that point, the instructors and 2 teachers' assistants helped create them, both because they knew the content better than I did, so they knew what they were thinking and what they wanted to see, but also in the interest of time, because I was also creating illustrations and animation stills at the same time. And so I think that's an important thing to communicate to clients who think, no, I can't draw, I can't do this, I can't communicate my vision in the sketch. It's like, no, it really doesn't have to be that complicated. Really, the main point of this is to really start thinking about what is going to be on screen for every part of narration. And so from these storyboards, I would then create the illustrations. So if we zoom in on the specific example that I have highlighted here, the narration reads, "One challenge faced by all the mechanical methods of cell disruption is the generation of heat. If not properly controlled, this can denature the protein of interest." And so as you can see, the instructor drew in black here. So he drew that he wanted to be on screen for that part. And actually, these were symbolic. Little stick people with the little arms meant that it would be a wide shot. So they'd have their arms in the shot. And stick figures without the little arm sticks meant that it would be a close-up shot. So they were thinking about that as well. And then he indicated that on screen would be the text mechanical methods and main challenge equals heat. And these storyboard reviews were most often conducted in person. We'd all get together in a conference room, sit at a table, read through the narration, talk about each frame, so that they would improve it or approve it in person, and we could discuss certain ideas. So in this example, in blue and in red, these are my very hastily sketched out ideas. Because looking at that, you might not be able to tell what I meant by that, but I was creating the illustrations anyway, so I knew what it was. But at that time, I suggested, why don't we have an animation here? So it was suggesting that we have a thermometer and a protein and have the temperature on the thermometer rise, and as it rose, have the protein denature. And so this was one of many examples where having an art and a science background was really helpful in order to be able to suggest ideas that might better illustrate these concepts and more visually explain these concepts. So from the storyboard, I then create the illustrations in Illustrator. And as you can see, I didn't just create the assets. I also laid them out graphically within the artboard. So the artboard was the same size that the actual videos came to be, 1920 by 1080 pixels. And I'd include screenshots of the professor if the storyboard called for it. And I would also collect all of the art assets and assign them to individual layers that corresponded to the frame number that we established with the storyboard. So all of the art assets for one video were collected in one Illustrator file, and they're all labeled here. And thank you. It made it really nice, really easy for the animators, because then when they had to go find their assets, they knew exactly what layer in Illustrator they were going to find them. And they also didn't have to worry about graphically arranging them on the artboard, because they were exactly where they already had to be. They just had to worry about moving them or doing whatever the particular animation called for. So in this case, I broke frame 16 into two frames, 16A and 16B. So 16A shows the thermometer with the intact protein, and then 16B shows that the temperature has risen and the protein, in this case insulin, has denatured. And this particular symbol is what we use throughout the course in order to represent denatured insulin. So again, all of the layers were named according to their frame number. And also, you can see in the top left corner of every frame, I also label them here. And that was important because from Illustrator, I would then export each frame as a JPEG and create the now infamous animation stills, which was a document that I created actually in PowerPoint and then exported as a PDF. So as you can see, it includes the layout from Illustrator, but then also we didn't want to have to keep referring back to that original text document with all of the text numbered. So the animation is included right here, right next to the graphic. And then in blue, directions of how the illustration should be animated. So you can see enlarged here, 16A, the instructions are to fade on the images, and then 16B, animate red of thermometer rising, fade transition to denatured protein. So again, the instructors would review this document and provide feedback, and then the animators would use it as a reference to create the animations. And this, again, as I said, was really handy to be able to distribute tasks too, because I could say to one animator, can you please animate frames, say, 19 through 14, and then a different animator, can you do frames 14 through 20? So again, you can distribute the task, and the final product is still going to come out very similar to what you've established at the beginning. So this is what the animation looks like. So the temperature rises, the protein morphs, and the denatured label comes on. And like I said, the animators created these animations in After Effects, and they, again, keeping very organized, labeled all of their comps using that same frame numbering system. So this made it very easy then for the animator to take these assets and take these comps and use the animation stills as a guide to create the final composite. And this is what
one challenge faced by all the mechanical methods of cell disruption is the generation of heat. If not properly controlled, this can denature the protein of interest.
So, and that is just one of many animations. And that's the process for how all of them were created. Let you know how many people liked the course, or sorry, how many people took the course and how they liked it. Often find in science visualization it's very difficult or sometimes impossible for us to know how many people our artwork reaches. But a nice aspect of online education is that it allows us to do exactly that. So the data that we got from the course from the very first run is that about 7,000 people enrolled, 2,270 engaged, which meant that in the very first week, they at least watched a video or did a problem set. And then 638 completed the course and got certificates. And this is actually a very common trend in online learning for far more people to enroll in the course than who actually complete it. But in this case, it was encouraging that about 10% of those who did enroll did complete the course. So from this slide, I'll go into the breakdown of certificates. So 454 of them were what they call honor certificates, and they'll get those just if they complete the course. You've got an honor certificate. But 184 of them were verified, meaning that they did pay for their certificate and that they also had to verify their identity. And verified certificates carry a little bit more weight, so they're often used when people are applying for scholarships, for schools, and for jobs. And in fact, now the honor certificates are no longer being offered through edX. So now it's just going to be the verified certificates. And to put that in perspective, the on-campus course that I mentioned, the 1003, normally has only about 15 students per course, sometimes even less. So that means that in order to reach the same number of students in one online course, the on-campus course would have to be taught 42 times or over 21 years. So quite a market difference. In addition to this participation data, the students were also asked to complete an exit survey at the end of the course about their backgrounds. So this data was self-reported and really depended upon the number of people who actually took the survey. But we were able to learn the following. So 1003X reached students in 138 countries, the top being the United States at about 38%, but 30% was actually students in developing countries. So for example, Mexico, Colombia, Egypt, and Pakistan. And the instructors engaged with these students as well, so they were able to communicate with them throughout the course. Yeah. Students had a wide range of educational experiences, with the majority of them having bachelor's or master's degrees, and a wide range of ages as well, from 15 to 74, and 30% of them were age 18 to 24. And as I said in the beginning, the course was made possible with a grant from the Amgen Foundation, so a really important aspect to look at was how likely were participants to pursue a career in the biopharmaceutical industry. And 82% said that they were likely, either likely or very likely. And they were also asked, what role did 1003X have in this decision? And 68% said that it did play a role, either some role or a large role. And that's, again, of 565 total respondents. In terms of testimonials, one person said, this course was wonderful and extremely helpful. The whole course was invigorating, and I will certainly recommend this course to my friends who are interested in transitioning to the industry. Another person said, it's my first time taking an online course, and I'm really impressed. The team must put a lot of effort into preparing the course. The videos are brilliant. The arrangement of the course is accurate, neat, and tidy. The lectures of every professor are totally awesome. Learning this course is a wonderful experience. Yeah, and so that's a great testimonial from someone who has never taken an online course before, that this was their first time. We also got a great testimonial from someone who's taken a lot of online courses. And so this is Victor from Nigeria, and he's pursuing his PhD in Germany right now. And his profile and the information that I've just presented to you now about the data from the course is featured right now on the Amgen Foundation blog, so you can check that out here if you want to. But it says on there that Victor has completed 20 MOOCs. And he originally thought when he joined the course that he'd download the materials and then reference those resources as he needed them, which is how he approaches MOOCs he may not have time to complete. But once he started the course, he says he got hooked. Yeah. And he provided this great quote, "This course does not beat around the bush. It goes straight to the point with such precision and artistry. The amount of effort that went into making the course is so evident. Plus, the pedagogy of the instructors of this course is remarkable." So it's really great to hear appreciation for the amount of effort and also the artistry that went into it. And that leads rather nicely to my closing thoughts about some of the challenges in creating content for online courses, and also ideas for ways that science visualization can play a larger role in the future. So one of the challenges is employment. As you've seen, online courses like 1003X provide a really wonderful opportunity for visualizations. The question is, how many of us who are trained in science and art are actually working on this content? I happen to be one of only very few science illustrators and animators employed full-time at MIT to work on online courses. And this is due in large part due to the funding that we received from the Amgen Foundation. Not all courses, of course, receive that kind of funding. And so many of them have used as a tactic employing freelance illustrators and animators on a per course or per project basis, or having fellows develop the media. Another challenge that applies to not only online learning, but I think all of us at large in science visualization, is helping people to understand the value and effectiveness of visuals in learning. I think we all understand, I think it's common sense, that visuals help with learning, that people can retain information longer because they can link that information to a visual. But the challenge is proving it. So for the very next run of 1003X, we hope to do exactly that. We hope to do, or we plan to do, split testing, because the edX platform allows you to break the participants into groups and present the information to them in different ways. So we can look at how the different methods affect learning. Also, as part of a pilot program with MITx, we are developing a textbook based on all the content developed for 1003X. So we can also look at how students use and learn from videos versus printed elements or printed references, which might be able to, might be easier to reference later on. So that's all pretty exciting. That's all coming up, and hopefully I'll have some data to share with you at the next BIOCOMM meeting. So in closing, I'd like to thank everyone who helped to create the course. In addition to the media production team, you can see we had many people from MIT, including content consultants, students, and faculty. Many of those faculty were also interviewed and included in the field trips. We had people from industry, from Amgen, Pfizer, Biogen, and the FDA, and also, as I mentioned, beta testers. And of course, special thanks to the Amgen Foundation for their generous support. And again, I'm Betsy Skrip, and I'd love to talk with you afterwards more about this. And you can reach me as well at bskrip@mit.edu and on Twitter @BetsySkrip. So thank you very much.